The Bengals received some underwhelming grades following the 2025 NFL Draft, but I still believe that they added a handful of quality players, and to prove it, I'm going to explain my favorite pick of theirs from the draft. Hi again, Bengals fans. John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati here, and a lot of people don't think that the Bengals drafted particularly well this year, and I know that because I'm one of those people. But the difference between myself and maybe someone who covers all 32 teams is that I can afford to look a little bit deeper than just the surface. So while I understand why most of the grades the Bengals have gotten are ranging from like C- to B-, I do think that there's quality beneath that grade. As I mentioned over the weekend, I thought the Bengals did a really good job on day 3 of the draft, identifying value at positions that were underrated in terms of need. And it was on day 3 where I thought the Bengals made their best pick of the draft when they selected Miami offensive lineman Jalen Rivers in the 5th round. Now, I like this pick for multiple reasons. Number one, I thought they got really good value here. I thought there was a really good chance that he would go off the board in the 4th round, maybe even sneak in to the late 3rd round, which is where Dylan Fairchild eventually went off the board for the Bengals. The grades I had for both Fairchild and Rivers were about the same, so to get one of them 2 rounds after the other, I thought was really good work by Cincinnati. There are reasons, of course, why I wouldn't have picked Rivers maybe before the 4th round. He was injured often in college. He's not the best athlete, so his overall upside is not particularly high. But once you enter day 3 of the draft, if you're able to find guys who just make it look easy on film, maybe they don't have all the elite traits that it takes to be an elite player in the NFL, but if they look good on tape, if they just know how to do their job and you can just ignore them, those are valuable players to find there. And that's what Rivers looked like to me on tape. Everything was kind of in sync when he was in pass protection. He would not lose very often, despite the fact that he didn't have a ton of quickness out of his stance, but he was efficient getting out of his stance. And his hands and his feet were almost always in sync, and he just locked onto you. He knew where to place his hands. He plays with a lot of power. It just worked for him. And how many offensive linemen have the Bengals drafted in like the last 10 years where you can say that about them? The number's not very high. And the reality is, we weren't necessarily sure what kind of offensive lineman the Bengals were going to be targeting this year. Historically, with late round picks, they've always valued versatility for offensive linemen, and that's definitely a box that Rivers checked. He played both guard and tackle for Miami, including both positions in the same games last year. But beyond that, there was a variable with new offensive line coach Scott Peters entering the equation this year, and we weren't exactly sure what kind of traits he was looking for in particular. Peters, being renowned as this teacher of pass protection technique, would have indicated that maybe he was looking for someone a little bit more traitsy that he could build up with his teachings. And don't get me wrong, Rivers definitely has the length that I think Peters was looking for, with 35-inch arms and an 84-inch wingspan. But I was pleasantly surprised that they went out and targeted someone this late in the draft who already had a really good foundation with his technique. And because of that, perhaps the amount of time that Peters has to dedicate to make sure that Rivers' technique is up to speed is not going to be that much. And as a result, Rivers can spend more time getting up to speed with the scheme of the offensive line and finding his fit within it. And the point of all of that is that Rivers is going to set himself up to have a really important role along the offensive line this year. Now, he may not be a starter. There's only 2 spots available at both guard spots, and there's going to be a lot of bodies at the competition already. But the ability to play guard in a pinch is definitely going to help him if they suffer injuries at that spot in training camp, and maybe they have to move him inside. But along with starting guards, they had a desperate need behind both Orlando Brown Jr. and Amarius Mims for this backup swing tackle role, and Rivers fits perfectly there right now. Just like a 4th cornerback on a team is always going to play significant snaps because there's always injuries at that spot, you need a 3rd offensive tackle that you can rely on to just play 20 to 30 emergency snaps in a really important game. And that was a lesson the Bengals had to learn the hard way last year when Brown suffered his knee injury and he missed a handful of games, and you had Cody Ford out there just trying to survive against pass rushers who were far better at his job than he was at his. Of course, he still has to prove his abilities, and obviously he has to prove he can stay healthy. His injuries in recent years definitely don't help his case there. And that may be a case as to why you're not expecting him to be a starter right out of the gate, because he has to prove that he can stay healthy throughout an entire NFL season first. But I really do believe that Rivers can be a staple here on this roster with this specific role for years to come. And again, for a 5th round pick, that's all you can ask for. So Jalen Rivers was my favorite pick that the Bengals made in the draft. But of course, I want to hear what you guys have to say. Let me know in the comments below what you think the Bengals' best pick was.